Good morning, friends. Good morning, friends. We're at work today. We are actually starting on a big project today that I don't want to say I'm super excited about, but I'm fairly excited. Do you remember on my birthday how I showed you those thousands of screws that were being sorted and organized into little drawers? Well, it's no longer fun anymore. We basically have to take photos of each of those types of screws and then make labels to go on the outside of the drawers. This is one of the drawers. This bottom one here is the prototype that I have mocked up using tape instead of an actual label, but this is what we're going for. I've done several larger projects like this in my career, and I really enjoy not doing the project, but I enjoy like doing the project. That made no sense, but basically I like kind of sinking my teeth into these big projects because it's fun to like sort of establish a workflow and then see it to completion. Like that's a lot of fun for me. So that's what I did yesterday is me and Noah, who's the student I'm working with on this, I sort of established a workflow, and then him and I did 4 screws to use as like a sample to like basically get things done, and I think we did a good job. So I'm going to give you guys some advice on what I have found that works for larger projects like this. And this is pertaining to like taking photographs of a lot of things. For instance, earlier this year, we had gotten a donation, or a loan rather, of about 1,200 sketches by the same artist. And each one of those sketches had to be photographed and organized and labeled and then properly uploaded and properly named and properly edited. And while that was definitely a much bigger project than this one, they pose some similar and some different challenges. So I'm just going to kind of give you guys some advice on what I do when it comes to like big photo projects like this, and hope that it can help you, if not in your photography projects, in your photography, assignments, but just in general. So it kind of marries both two of my great loves, which is organization and then photography. So this is being super organized with your photography. So I hope this is, if not informative, at least helpful. We are not taking pictures of screws yet, but we are at Starbucks, and they are selling their Cranberry Bliss Bar, an entire box of them for $5. And guess who got one? Yeah! So in case you forgot, here's what the screw situation looks like. We're screwed. This is Noah. He's the student that I'm working with on this. I only work with 3 students. You guys have just met them in successive order, and it probably is confusing. These are the screws. These are the containers they need to go in. And the unique situation, the unique problem with this particular job is that each one of these screws look a lot alike. And even if they're not exactly alike, like we'll take, for instance, these 2 screws. To me, I'm not a screw person, so obviously I'm not going to know very well, but these are actually 2 completely different screws with completely different uses and completely different needs. So we needed to make sure that they are kept separate so that a photograph of this one does not get accidentally placed on the cover of this one. And it's hard to see scale with the photos that we're doing, so we needed a way to associate the photograph that we're taking with the individual screw that we're taking the picture of. And the solution, these are the 4 that we've already done. The solution was to create these little bits of paper which had the file numbers on them. So basically, when we take a picture of the screw, I record the file number, or I say aloud the file number that this screw picture is associated with. Noah writes it down on this little piece of paper, and then I also input that into a spreadsheet that I'm working off of. Because in addition to the screw needing to be identified separate from all these other thousands of screws, each screw also has its own identifying language, like what type of screw it is. Like these are called lug bolts?
Lag bolts.
Lag bolts. Like these are lag bolts. So the out screws, which is different. But like the outside of each of these, for example, needs to have a picture of the screw. It needs to have also the label of what it is. So not only are we recording the picture number as it pertains to what screw, but we're associating this picture number with a description which is going to go on the outside. And I will show you guys the spreadsheet that we're working off of here in a second. So this is my little pop-up studio down here in the wood shop. And basically what's going on is that I just have a plain white piece of paper. I've got it taped up down here and then taped up there to create that slope, which is going to be nice and good for getting pictures of different sizes of screws. We have a single light source here that's just an LED panel. I think it's a 9x9 maybe, or 6x6, something like that. We also have another folded piece of paper right here that I'm using as a bounce card. I use it that way so that I didn't have to haul two lights down here. When you're using a bounce card, it's not exactly going to be as strong as the original light source that you're using, but it can be really great as a fill light when you need it. And you can kind of get, because if I had two lights right here, it would be flooding the little scene with light, which I don't necessarily want to do. So using one single light source and a bounce card is going to give me more shadows. It's going to be more dynamic. We're going to be able to see more details. So I have my camera here. I'm using a Canon EOS 5DS, which is my standard studio camera. I also have a 50 millimeter. It's a 51.4 on there. I'm dialed in at f-stop. It was a 5, 250, and then 400 ISO. Before I forget, I am going to change this to shooting raw, not shooting raw, because as much as I love raw images, I think it's going to actually be a bigger hassle to do that here. Oh, my white balance is set to auto just because I want to do as little work as I have to with these in post. So we're just going to go ahead and just switch it to a large, and we're going to switch it off of raw because I don't need raws on here. So let's just hope that I remember to switch back after we're done, because I'm usually pretty bad at that. This is the spreadsheet that we're working with. This kind of shows you what we're doing. So these are the descriptions of the individual nails, and then these are going to be the file numbers. These are the same file numbers that are then going to go on these little sheets of paper and then be stuck into the drawer so that we can associate what's in the drawer specifically with the number on the spreadsheet. We also have a description here, and the ones that no one knows descriptions of, we're gonna go ahead and fill in now. But the ones we don't know, we're going to go ahead and shoot anyways, because luckily we can associate easily the screws with what's on the spreadsheet. So if we go through later and we find that, file, or we find that, on here, file number 5319 doesn't have a description, we can easily find file 5319 over there and then fill in the description. So that's kind of the plan. So while Noah and I are doing this, and you guys are seeing a beautiful time lapse, I wanted to sort of express and reflect upon the importance of working together on something like this. I'm very fortunate in that, I work really well with Noah. I work really well with all the people that I have here at the museum with me. And I think that's really key to the success of a project like this. Because Noah and I were communicating, not even just now, but when we were creating this plan, when we were working on the labels, it was done cooperatively. And while I tend to always put myself in a leadership position, because personally I think that suits my personality and it's something that, I think I'm kind of good at, I definitely don't doubt that I could not do this alone. And it's hard not to micromanage. I mean, even now I sort of wanted to go over there and organize things a little bit, but this was his space and he was doing just fine. And even today, when at the end here he says that, we can't do this anymore because I need to work on this some, I have to give him the space to do that. And I'm glad the way this is working out. I'm glad that, things are going well on this, and without him and without us working together like we do, this in no way, shape, or form would be possible. So this is a pretty big undertaking, I feel like, and I have no doubt that we're going to get it done. It's going to look great. So I think that's all we're going to do for today. we're concerned that there are duplicate piles, so we're gonna wait until Noah can kind of go through and double check a bunch of things. But it doesn't look like we made much, but look at all these that we filled up. I mean, all those are filled now that they weren't before, and there's much less of these things up on the table. So we actually made a lot of headway, and I think this is good for today. So I'll see you guys upstairs, and I'll talk to you guys some about editing. So I just got back upstairs, and on the way upstairs, I stopped in the office and I got some labels. These aren't the exact size that I wanted to go with for these. I think the labels that I had picked out for this were going to be 3.5 inches long by 3/4 of an inch high. We would have had to special order those labels. So I'm slightly changing my design and slightly changing my purpose to work with something we already have in-house, which I think is kind of good. I mean, always work with what you have if at all possible. These are Avery labels. Avery is really nice because, and I'm sure most major label manufacturers do this but you can actually go on the Avery website and they will give you, if you type, because each type of label is going to have a unique number. Like this one is the 5160. So you can go onto Avery's website, look up this specific label, and it will give you templates for it. And the templates, you can download it in like an EPS, a JPEG, a PDF, whatever you want it to be. Why this is helpful for me is that originally I was going to try to do all of this through commands and actions and all that sort of thing in Photoshop. But I spoke with Jeremy, you've met him, and he's an IT guy. And I told him what I needed, what I was trying to do, and he said that in able to do what you need to do, you're going to have to write a program. And that's going to take too long for how many you need to do. Because we only need to do about 200 of these, and it's a one-time gig. If I was doing 200 of these a day, then it might be worth doing a program for. But what little we have, it's just going to be easier to do things manually, I think. So I'm going to actually be placing these photos individually on a InDesign document. When I get my new computer, I'm not going to do it on my little MacBook because that's not going to be good. But I'm going to be individually placing them and placing the descriptions, making sure everything is lined up and looks exactly as it should. What I'll do when the time comes is that I will go and I'll find the template for this particular label. I will import that template into InDesign as a layer, of course. I will design around that template and then just turn off that layer before I export it for print. So basically, it'll help me create nice, clean labels that I can then print and then put on the things. So because we are doing this manually, I am running into a couple more problems because when I had planned to do this all via actions and Photoshop, it was supposed to like all be one just go, but I'm having to like just rethink a couple things. And I think that's sort of important when you work on projects large or small, that you need to be flexible and you need to be willing to try new things. And, you know, my initial plan and my initial workflow isn't even valid anymore. I've had to amend it. So while it's important to stick with the workflow and the workflow is important to adhere to, it's also important to be flexible with your workflow and to know that, be able to adjust it on the spot, because sometimes things don't work out the way that you thought it would. And I have no doubt that it'll work out just as well, if not better than I was thinking it was, but it's just going to be a bit different. But that's okay. This is the old existing prototype, and then this is the new amended prototype because of the new label sizes. One of the things that Noah didn't like about these, because Noah's the one who's going to be using these a lot, same thing with Randy, is that these little handles were sort of difficult to pull out. But the good news is that when we put this label across here, it makes these much, much easier to deal with. So the only real difference between the old one and the new one is that the old one, I had the image number wrapped around the outside so it was hidden. But because of this new smaller size, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm actually going to put it right on the image in the lower corner, which I think is actually going to be better, but we'll see. So I wasn't happy with the way that this was turning out on the screen. As you can see, it's a very, very square image, and I wanted something nicer than that because I want the screw to be first and like noticeable. So we just changed the orientation of this. We're going to make the descriptions go on top and the top 1/4 inch, and then the bottom 3/4 of an inch are going to be the specific screw picture, which means we can go with this original crop ratio, which I think works much better for the screws. So after a bit of struggling, I was finally able to get this sort of the way that I wanted it to. I had to go in and crop the images individually and then make like a watermark that I'm applying now in Photo Mechanic that I will show you guys as soon as it's done processing. This is much easier than I thought it was going to be. I sort of knew what I was doing. It's just a matter of sometimes getting yourself in the right direction. So as soon as this finishes processing, I'll show you guys here in a second. I wasn't able to remove the file because the file name is 1MOA for Museum of Art and then the 4-digit file number. I wasn't able to remove the 1MOA. Instead, I had to leave that on there. So it'll say this on every single one, but it's consistent. And then the good thing about this is that it's always going to be traceable back to what it was. So this morning at the spreadsheet, when we were taking down the numbers and then putting those little tags in the screws, these are those numbers that we see down here in the lower left-hand corner. So that's how we're going to be able to associate these photos with the screws that they go into. So I think that's kind of all we can do right now, and then we will kind of work on this a bit more next week or when we get back from break, because I can't do the next step until I either have more screws or have my computer, so we'll go from there. So I know this video has been crazy long and hopefully helpful or at least informative to let you guys know kind of about my process and like what this particular project is. I will probably not work on it again. Well, I'm going to be coming in to work on the 20th, and I think we're going to do more screw pictures, and then I probably won't work on it again, obviously, till I get back on the 6th, because then I'll have my new computer and everything, and we should be able to make we should be able to start making the sheets themselves. So I will keep you guys updated on the resolution of this. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.